The ground was soaked in heavy rain and darkness loomed all around when a boy suddenly sprinted into a shadowy building. Choi Do-hyun was running for his life, completely out of breath, while a terrifying monster chased him through the pitch-black corridor. His heart pounded as he blindly navigated the darkness, and somehow made it into a restroom. The place was in ruins, tiles shattered, windows broken, debris scattered everywhere. Without wasting a second, he dashed into one of the stalls and slammed the door shut, locking it tightly. Pressing his trembling hand against the wall, he gasped for air, struggling to calm his racing breath. A rough cough escaped his lips, but just as he began to catch his breath, a screeching sound made him freeze. Slowly turning toward the door, he looked up and there it was. The same monster, with long, dripping hair and glowing red eyes, stared down at him from the ceiling. It grinned with an eerie twist and said that it was done. In one swift motion, the monster extended its arm and slashed Do-hyun without mercy. His blood sprayed across the broken toilet walls, and everything went still. Choi Do-hyun suddenly dropped to the floor of his small room, the VR headset still strapped to his face, and controllers clutched tightly in his hands. He gasped, pulling off the gear, and his wide eyes darted around until he realized he was back in reality. Panting from fear, he stared at the screen in front of him, then slowly stood up, brushing the dust from his clothes. Laughing nervously, he muttered that the way the monster popped out scared the hell out of him, even made his butt hurt. The monitor in front of him was still glowing, showing his live gameplay stream, and comments were pouring in. As he climbed back into his gaming chair, he glanced at the chat and read a few out loud. One viewer said his fall was hilarious. Another joked about him nearly touching the ceiling, and someone else pointed out that he should have gone left. Sitting back down with a sigh, he tried to defend himself, saying that this wasn't just funny, that the sweat on his chair proved how scary it really was. The VR experience had pushed him to the edge, and even though his audience was laughing, he was still trying to catch his breath. Choi Do-hyun was a third-tier variety game streamer. Thanks to his loyal viewers who oddly enjoyed watching him suffer, he was barely managing to make a living. Sitting back in his gaming chair, he started reading comments and replied with a grin, saying they'd never understand unless they tried it themselves. He asked if they really wanted to see him pass out again like last time. As the chat encouraged him to try the game again and win it this time, he dove back into the virtual world. With more focus and a little luck, he finally found the exit. Returning to reality, he triumphantly announced to his fans that it was over and asked if they saw how he cleared it in one go. The chat lit up with reactions. Some couldn't believe it ended so fast, and one joked that he must have peeked at a walkthrough. A viewer donated 20,000 KRW, asking if he'd have stayed in the game if the ghost was pretty. As Do-hyun did a headstand and casually exercised in the middle of his room, he thanked the donor and shook his head, saying what kind of question was that? Sitting down again, he explained it wasn't an act and that no matter how pretty a ghost looked, it was still a ghost. He added that if a ghost looked attractive to someone, that probably meant they were already cursed. Stretching his arms, he said he had to head out soon, so the stream would end there. Someone named Delmong asked what happened to the collab with Sige. Do-hyun answered that he wasn't sure, since Sige had gone silent and he couldn't reach him. Another comment noted that Sige hadn't streamed in over a month and asked if something was wrong. A viewer mentioned Sige had once said he found an amazing game and told them to look forward to it but vanished the very next day. Others joked he'd gone into hiding to binge play. As these comments flooded in, Do-hyun's eyes drifted and he recalled the last time he saw Sige, casually smoking a cigarette. Sige had told him not to worry about family and just do what he wanted. He said his family also tried to stop him when he first started streaming, but once he began doing well, they were even happier than him. That memory made Do-hyun smile faintly. He muttered that maybe something urgent had come up and said he was planning to visit Sige's house on his way home anyway. He told his fans he'd take a break until tomorrow and would update them then, ending the stream with a quick goodbye. He tried calling Sige but only got a long ringtone before the automated voice said the number was turned off. A look of concern crossed his face. He checked his messages and saw the many unread texts he had sent to Sige, none of which were answered. A thought crossed his mind: should he report this to the police? He called his mom and told her he was just about to leave, assuring her that he was heading out at night because it was less stressful than daytime traffic and she shouldn't worry. He reminded her not to wait up, that he'd arrive by dawn, and to just go to sleep. Putting on his jacket, Do-hyun stepped out of the room. But behind him, the computer was still on. and the massage from Sige appeared. While on his way home, Choi Do-hyun made a quick stop after feeling an urgent need to pee. Once done, he stepped out of the restroom, placing a hand over his stomach and muttering that holding it in nearly killed him. As he reached into his pocket and checked his phone, he noticed a notification from Delete Hyun, his nickname for Sige. His eyebrows furrowed in surprise as he whispered what the heck, wondering when Sige had replied. Opening the message, he saw it was just a link. He called him again, annoyed, saying if he was really worried, he could have at least picked up the phone. But once again, the voice on the other end said the number was currently turned off. Do-hyun sighed, wondering if Sige really just sent a random link and then vanished again. Clicking on it, the game title appeared: Dogyeon Ghost Love. He stared at the screen and mumbled that he never even heard of this game before. The description read that it was about ghosts who linger in the world due to unresolved feelings, and the player had to conquer them with love to help them move on peacefully. A dating sim involving ghosts, he scoffed, thinking that developers were really coming up with anything these days. He recalled comments saying Sige found an amazing game, and then going off-grid right after. Shaking his head, Do-hyun said there was no way Sige had ghosted everyone just because of this. Still, he admitted Haeyoung had a real knack for finding weird games like this and tapped the install button. Just then, a loud crack of thunder lit up the sky, making him flinch. Looking around, he muttered what was up with the random thunder out of nowhere. His eyes shifted back to the screen, which now showed a strange warning that said women with lingering grudges were cold enough to bring snowfall even in midsummer, and that quitting midway was not an option. Despite the strange wording, he clicked yes and began walking again, telling himself he had nothing better to do at his family's place anyway. If the game turned out to be fun, he could always stream it later. Slipping his phone into his pocket, Do-hyun had no idea that the game was already running, and on the screen, glowing letters appeared: matching system is now activating. Rain poured relentlessly as Choi Do-hyun drove along the highway, heading home. He glanced at the windshield and muttered that no one had mentioned anything about rain today. His GPS suddenly beeped, informing him to turn left soon due to a route deviation. He frowned, saying the GPS must be malfunctioning. There was no left turn on a straight highway. Yet the voice repeated itself, insisting he turn left in a moment. Again and again, it recalculated and urged him to change direction, causing him to grit his teeth in frustration. He jabbed at the cancel button, shouting for it to stop, but the screen refused to respond. Suddenly, the voice calmly said that he had arrived at his destination and navigation was ending. Do-hyun sighed in relief, thinking that it had finally stopped, but as he looked up to the road ahead, his eyes widened in horror. Standing in the middle of the lane was a shadowy figure, its presence ghostly and motionless. Startled, he yanked the wheel and slammed on the brakes, believing he was about to hit a person. His car spiraled and screeched across the wet pavement, spinning a full circle. He felt the impact and saw the figure twist unnaturally upon contact. His vehicle eventually halted, and his head slammed lightly into the steering wheel. Shaking off the shock, he whispered in disbelief that he had just hit someone. Glancing into the side mirror, he spotted a motionless figure lying behind his car. Without a second thought, he bolted from the driver's seat, running toward the collapsed form while shouting desperately to see if they were okay. It was a girl, her limbs grotesquely twisted in directions that no human body should ever bend. He knelt down beside her, frantically shaking her shoulder and pleading for her to wake up. Hands trembling, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, uncertain whether to call for help or an ambulance. Just then, a glowing red notification appeared on his phone screen, declaring that on a rainy highway, a woman had crashed into his car as he rushed home, but the panic and fear faded quickly when he realized she wasn't human. As he stared at the screen in disbelief, the girl's body began to move. She rose slowly, her long dark hair clinging to her soaked skin, and her eyes full of sorrow and haunting rage locked onto his. Do-hyun's breath caught in his throat. On the phone screen, a new prompt appeared, giving him 4 eerie choices. Option A: whatever she is, a ghost, just run away. Option B: shouldn't I ask why she's still lingering in this world? Option C: standing in the middle of the road like that, is she insane? Demand compensation for car repair. And Option D: an accident happened, I should take her to the nearest hospital first. Choi Do-hyun stared at the screen, his mind reeling. A ghost? What the hell was happening? He pressed the power button, swiped across the screen, tapped furiously, but nothing worked. His phone refused to shut down. Gritting his teeth, he cursed under his breath, muttering that this was exactly why people warned against downloading random games. But then a voice, soft, broken, and chilling, whispered from right in front of him, asking why he had killed her. Do-hyen's eyes widened in disbelief. Slowly, with trembling hands, he lifted his gaze from the phone and looked ahead. There she was, the same twisted girl from before, her body broken, her limbs bent in ways that defied nature, standing mere inches away. Her vacant, mournful eyes stared deep into his. She whispered again, asking why he let her die. With a cry, Do-hyen flung his phone away and stumbled backward, crawling on all fours, shouting in fear. The ghost moved toward him, dragging her limbs, repeating again and again why he let her die and begging for help. She looked like something out of a nightmare, her walk unnatural, her voice hollow and echoing. Without thinking, he scrambled to his feet, heart pounding, telling himself that whatever this thing was, it wasn't human. He turned and dashed toward his car, shouting in a panic, trying to convince himself that this was all some kind of twisted hallucination. Behind him, the ghost whispered that he was just like the others. Then, as if the game had made the choice for him, his phone lying on the road glowed with a message saying option A was selected, run away. The ghost's voice cracked with pain as she said he was just like the rest. Another notification flashed, saying she was very disappointed and that her affection level had dropped significantly. As she clutched her head, the ghost screamed that she just wanted to live. A red warning appeared. Her status had changed from natural to hostile. Do-hyen's breath caught as he reached his car, frantically trying to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. He screamed in frustration, begging it to open. Behind him, the ghost grew closer. Goosebumps prickled his skin. He turned to face her one last time, and before he could react, her cold hand grabbed his neck and slammed him to the ground. She hovered over him, her face inches from his, her twisted body trembling with rage. But then, as he looked at her closely, a strange realization dawned on him: she was beautiful. His eyes widened in confusion. He recalled the old saying, when a ghost looks beautiful, it means you're already possessed. Had she already taken over him? Lying beneath her, dazed, he didn't notice the faint sound of a horn in the distance. From the side of the highway, a bus was speeding toward them, its lights cutting through the rain. Through the corner of his eye, he saw it getting closer every second. In that moment, before everything turned white, he saw her expression change. Just for a split second, her face wasn't twisted by rage, but weighed down by unbearable sadness. And then, across the screen of his blood-smeared phone, one final message appeared: win her heart, increase her affection level, and resolve her grudge to restore her true form. Thunder rumbled over the place where Choi Do-hyen had stopped earlier to use the restroom. His eyes flew open as he let out a loud scream. The sudden burst of pain made him cry out that his bones felt like they were shattering and his insides twisting. His voice was so loud that people around turned to look. A man approached, asking if he was all right, but Do-hyen shoved him away, shouting for him to stay back. He stared at the man, gasping for breath, while whispers spread among the onlookers. Some muttered that helping strangers these days just leads to trouble. Sitting on the ground, Do-hyen was completely overwhelmed. He looked around and mumbled that he needed to rest and stop. Pulling out his phone, he muttered that he had definitely been on the highway. He wondered if everything had just been a dream, but then his eyes landed on the screen, and what he saw sent a chill through his body. The screen read, Choi Do-hyen, you have died. Restarting from the last save point. This is an outgoing date. If you do not wish to continue the date with her, please leave the area. Do-hyen's expression turned to shock as he covered his mouth with his hand. On his profile, his name, age, height, weight, and even MBTI were all there. A man approached again, asking if he was okay, but Do-hyen didn't answer. He simply stood up and bolted toward the parking lot. The man called out to him, but Do-hyen ignored it, jumping into his car and driving off. As he hit the road, thoughts raced through his mind. He tried to convince himself that ghosts could not possibly exist and that this was all some hallucination caused by stress, lack of sleep, streaming, and editing. He just needed some rest. But once again, the GPS started to beep. Rerouting due to deviation from the route. Do-hyen yelled in frustration, refusing to believe any of it was real. The GPS kept repeating commands. Turn left. Take a U-turn. Before he realized it, he had ended up back at the same spot, where the woman was once again standing in the middle of the road. He slammed the brakes just in time and avoided hitting her. Leaning against the steering wheel, he let out a desperate cry, wondering why this was happening to him. He questioned if it was all truly because he downloaded a single game. Slamming his head gently against the steering wheel, he begged for an explanation. His phone began to beep, and he slowly looked up at the screen. The message read, "As I struggled between a dream and reality, she appears before me again, for a second time already." Do-hyun clenched his teeth, trying to convince himself that in the end, it was just a game. He pulled out his phone and told himself he had played visual novels during streams before. All he had to do was pick the best choices and raise the character's affection level. Then, the same options appeared on the screen. Option A said, "Isn't she already dead? Carefully turn the car around and escape." Option B said, "Do you want to die again? Get out of the car and yell in anger." Option C offered to drive her home. Option D said to ask what she was doing there and find out her situation. Choi Do-hyun tried to calm his racing heart, thinking that if he just built up enough affection, everything would be okay. Even the safest choices in games usually led to decent outcomes. He told himself not to panic and that if it had come to this, he should just get it over with. But his hands were shaking and sweat clung to his back. Suddenly, a loud bang hit the windshield. Do-hyun raised his head and saw the ghost slamming her hands on the glass, shouting that it was unfair for her to be the only one suffering. He tried to remind himself that this was just a bishoujo dating simulation, just a game where he picked choices. He whispered encouragement to himself, saying that he was good at games, and with that he mustered his courage. Taking a deep breath, he opened the door, stepped out into the rain, and grabbed an umbrella. Walking slowly toward the ghost, he opened it above her. She turned to look at him with a side glance, and Do-hyun carefully said that he wasn't suspicious or anything and that he didn't know what was going on, but he wanted to help. He asked if she wanted to go for a ride, offering to take her home. His phone screen lit up, confirming that he had chosen option C. He thought he'd made the right choice, but the fear was still heavy in his chest. He wanted to run, but forced himself to stay. He asked himself why she was just staring and wondered if he had chosen wrong. Would she kill him just because she didn't like the choice? The ghost looked towards him and said, "Can you see me?" The ghost put her hand on his arm. Choi very hesitantly nodded and said confusedly, "Yeah, I can see you." She without even wasting a second hugged Choi right away, and Choi ended up hitting the ground and she was again above him. Joy was so confused, but the girl started crying and said, "Please, I beg you, do not leave me behind. I do not want this anymore. Please, please, I beg you." She again looked so beautiful. She hugged him tightly, saying, "Do not leave me anymore. Please." Thus, Joy's phone said, "Your choice has silently increased her favorability. Her condition stabilizes." Joy thought, fear had blinded me from seeing it. What kind of story does she have to be crying so sorrowfully? What could have happened to make her like this? She put her head on his chest and started to cry heavily. He put his hand above her head, gave her comfort, and then he pulled her head away from him, saying, "I am really sorry, but I am completely drenched in rain. At this rate, I might die from hypothermia too. Could you step aside for a moment?" After some time, we found them on the car. Joy was riding the car, and she was on the passenger seat. She was continuously crying. Joy thought, what do I do now? Somehow I managed to get her in the car. But it's certainly a free date. If this were a dating sim, there should at least be choice. This is just abandonment. What am I even supposed to do in this situation? Joy looked on the mirror that behind him was the same truck that had hit him earlier. He gave the truck the space to go forward, thinking, this car, it was the one that killed me at the start. Stopping on the highway is dangerous. Ride the game is not important right now. First, I will move to the park, or somewhere safe. Then once she calmed down, we can talk again. Joey pulled up the car on the side of the road because the car was continuously beeping because the girl's side of the door was not closed properly. Joey stopped the car and said to her that the door on your side is not closing, so let me take care of it real quick. Without going out from the car, he extended his hand towards the side of her and tried to open the door and then shut it again. But as he did that, his hand was so close to her that he was confused. He said to himself, stay calm, do not make a mistake by acting carelessly, and he ended up doing a mistake. He somehow freaked out and disbalanced, and ended up disbalancing himself, and his head ended up on her leg. He quickly started and sat back again. His full face was sweaty. He thought, I am screwed. This is not just a simple mistake. Choi Do-hyun sat frozen in the driver's seat, his face completely pale, thoughts racing and hands trembling. He kept thinking, what have I done? Beside him, Ha-Yun, who had been silently crying, tried to cover herself with her hands. Her voice trembled as she opened her mouth and asked if this was the reason she had been brought here. Do-Hyun instantly panicked and shouted, no, 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 that's impossible. Please believe me, it was really an accident. The door wasn't closing properly, so I just tried to fix it. I didn't mean anything by it. He thought he was doomed, that she'd misunderstand everything and end it right there. He desperately added, we can't just block the road like this, right? I figured maybe ghosts couldn't close doors, so I wanted to help. I had no intention of doing anything bad. I don't even have the courage for that. Back in school, people used to call me a shut-in gamer. I'm really sorry, but if it's alright, could we just head to the next rest stop? It feels dangerous here. Ha-Yun slowly turned her head towards him. Do-Hyun's voice cracked as he added, I mean, if you don't want to, that's totally fine too. But then, to his surprise, she smirked and laughed. He blinked in disbelief, then looked at her, as she smiled gently, and said she was just relieved. She admitted she had been worried the first person she met might be a weirdo. She thanked him for the ride and introduced herself as Ha-Yun. Do-Hyun, still a little nervous but now calmer, nodded and said, I'm Choi Do-Hyun. As they started driving again, Ha-Yun thanked him sincerely, saying he must be busy and yet still offered to help. He replied casually, no, it's just a small detour really. She looked out the window and softly said it felt strange, like she never imagined she'd get another chance to talk to someone again. She admitted she had already given up. Do-Hyun didn't speak right away, but after a moment, he quietly asked if she was okay sharing what had happened. Why was she on the road? What brought her here? But he quickly added, only if you're comfortable. If it's too hard, you don't have to talk about it. I was just curious. Ha-Yun smiled faintly and said she didn't really know either. She explained that she had been dragged off by a man she didn't recognize, and when she opened her eyes, she was on that highway. At first, she thought she had survived somehow. Scared the man might come back, she ran along the road. But slowly, things started to feel wrong. No one seemed to notice her. No matter how loudly she called for help, people just passed by. Even after days of walking, the road never ended. That's when she realized she had died. She was trapped there, all alone. When Do-Hyun first spoke to her, she couldn't believe it. Her voice cracked again as she began to cry. Then she quickly wiped her tears and apologized, saying it had been so long since she last spoke to anyone that she must have embarrassed herself. Just the thought that she might get to see her family again made her emotional. She looked at him with gratitude in her eyes and said, thank you so much. Choi Do-Hyun sat quietly, the silence in the car thick with emotion. He looked over at the fading tears on Ha-Yun's face and thought, what should I say to comfort her, even just a little? After a pause, he finally spoke. But what if your family can't see you anymore? Ha-Yun smiled gently, turned her head toward him, and said, then would you mind if I stayed just a little longer? Do-Hyun glanced at her with surprise, unsure of how to respond. She chuckled and said softly, if you look that shocked, it makes me feel a bit embarrassed. But could you at least deliver my final message to them? He looked at her for a moment, then turned his eyes back to the road, quietly replying, yeah. As they continued driving, he thought, is she really just a character in a game? I have so many questions, but even so, I genuinely hope she gets to meet her family again. Just then, his phone buzzed with a notification. It read, soon, the first midnight date will end. His eyes widened. The date is ending? What does that even mean? As they drove on, the sky gradually brightened. The first rays of sunlight broke through, casting golden light across the road. The moment the sunlight touched Ha-Yun, something strange began to happen. Her figure shimmered, her body glowing softly as golden dust started drifting from her like petals in the wind. Do-Hyun's breath caught. He turned to her in alarm. Ha-Yun. She looked at him, eyes a little sad, and said, I'm sorry. No matter what you do for me, it seems I only regain my sense of self during the night. I know this is selfish, but could you help me a little longer? He answered quickly, I'll be at my parents' house until tomorrow, so I have some time. I feel like there's still a lot left unsaid. Tonight, same time, same place. Can we meet again? What do you think? Ha-Yun seemed startled for a second, but then she smiled warmly. She nodded and said yes. I'll be waiting for you tonight. And with that, she faded completely, dissolving into glowing dust as the sun rose fully into the sky. Another notification appeared on his phone. The midnight date has ended. Calculating romance score. Score 80 points. 1 death penalty applied. Romance rank B-. You've earned 40 LP. LP shop unlocked. Do-hyun blinked at the message, gripping the steering wheel. What the hell is this? Another line appeared. Tip: during free dates, even your smallest actions can affect the character's affinity. Do-hyun leaned back in his seat, completely drained. LP? Affinity? Are you seriously telling me this is a game? But the sense of emptiness that filled the car felt far too real. The warmth that Ha-yun left behind lingered, yet the silence she left was deafening. Was she really wandering that highway all alone? Was she someone who existed in real life? And if this really is a game, then what even is the purpose of all this? He placed a head on the steering wheel, his mind weighed down by questions that had no answers. The night had ended. Morning had come. But the feeling in his chest suffocating, frustrating, hollow didn't fade at all. A message appeared on Choi Do-hyun's phone. It was from Sige, telling him to come over. Choi narrowed his eyes and thought, the only key that might unlock this mystery is him. While driving to Sige's place, he tried calling him, but the number was unreachable. Frustrated, he muttered, "What the hell is going on with him?" He parked in the lot and headed straight to Sige's apartment. As he reached the door, it was already open. He shouted, "Sige? What do you left the door open? Where did you go?" Stepping inside, he found the place completely messy. Cautiously, he walked through the cluttered apartment, his eyes landing on a scattered pile of newspapers cutouts on the desk. He knelt down and picked one up, realizing they were all missing person reports. His gaze stopped on the front page. There was a picture of Ha-yun. Choi's thoughts raced. I just installed a game, and it was just a Bishoujo dating sim. As he stood there frozen, trying to make sense of everything, a presence appeared behind him. A figure stood there. Its face was that of a bear, but the features were blurred. Choi Do-hyun held the paper tightly in his hand, eyes scanning the page as he muttered, "What is this? Why is Ha-yun on a missing person flyer?" Confusion twisted in his chest. Why would someone who just stays home playing games have these? He raised his head and looked toward the wall, where countless cutouts and clippings were plastered. His eyes widened. No way. Now that I look at it, most of them are about murder cases or missing persons. Ha-yun said she was killed by a man she'd never seen before. Some of these articles, I remember seeing them on the news. That means, could it be, do people who were unjustly murdered become ghosts and appear as characters? He walked over to a notebook lying nearby, flipped it open, and read the first page carefully. Each ghost appears at the place where they died or a location that holds a strong memory for them. As long as they have a physical body, they cannot stay too far from this place. Although there are slight variations, wandering spirits despair during times of strong positive energy mourning. No matter what you do, you cannot quit or delete the game just like other dating sims. The only option is to raise their affection level and reach an ending. Choi's heart sank. He wrote all of this, he knew. As he stared at the notebook, deep in thought, a sudden loud banging echoed through the room. His blood ran cold. From behind him, a distorted voice rang out. "Hide well or your hair will show." He turned his head slightly, trembling. A girl was walking toward him slowly, wearing a bear puppet on her head, strands of hair poking out from under it. Her footsteps were unnatural, jerky. Not in the garden either. "You will step on a lettuce seed." Suddenly, Choi's phone lit up with a bright warning. Her affection level is hatred. Escape immediately. Choi Do-hyun stood frozen, unable to process what the ghost was saying. She loomed in front of him, her voice chilling. "Not the fence either. You will step on pumpkin vines. A red ribbon." Choi was lost, struggling to understand her cryptic words. The ghost lifted her gaze to meet his and whispered, "Found you." Before he could react, the entire apartment erupted into flames. The ghost had opened the gas, and a massive blast of fire consumed the place. The heat was overwhelming. Water began to pour down from the ceiling, dousing the flames. But Choi, overwhelmed by the chaos, collapsed to the ground, fainting. His mind raced with questions. What exactly is this game? Why did my brother send me the link? Why? The notebook lay open before him, and his eyes caught the words, "I am sorry, Do-hyun, please." Confusion and panic flooded his thoughts. Why is it asking me for a favor? Suddenly, the ghost was right in front of him, holding a broken baseball bat. Because of you, they all died, she said, her voice cold. Without warning, she swung the bat at him. The impact sent him reeling, blood splattering across the room. Choi's vision blurred, and just as everything went dark, a notification flashed on his screen: "You have died." When Choi regained consciousness, he found himself back in his car. The thunder roared above as he breathed heavily, clutching his arm in pain. Damn it! Why is this happening to me? He thought, his frustration mounting. The parking lot around him was familiar, but everything felt unreal. He grabbed his phone, dialing his brother's number, but the message remained the same: not reachable. Exiting the car, Choi sat on the cold pavement, feeling the weight of the situation. Why the hell is my brother doing this? He muttered. How much time has passed without me being able to do anything? Thanks to this, I've learned a few things. This game cannot be deleted. Even if I throw away my phone, it comes back. And there's even a limit to my lives. He glanced at the UI on his phone, noticing 2 hearts missing. Those must be my remaining lives. He shook his head in frustration. A ghost dating sim where you bet your life? How does that even make sense? If I tell anyone, they'll just think I'm crazy. His eyes flickered to the memory of the notebook, and the hope it might hold more answers. But there's no way I can go back there. Choi then remembered Ha Yun's words: "Let's meet at night." Sitting there, feeling helpless, Choi made a decision. Sitting around like this won't change anything. I promised to help, didn't I? I need to move, somehow. Things will work out. Choi Do-hyun walked through the alleyway and stood in front of the small house building, where he met a man who explained that the family had moved out over a year ago. The man mentioned that the father and his 2 daughters had lived upstairs, but after their daughter went missing, they left. Choi asked if the man knew where they had moved to or had any contact information, but the man replied that he didn't know and warned him to avoid looking for them. As the man walked away, Choi descended the stairs toward the road, thinking about how the family had finally gotten their life together and decided to start fresh with their younger daughter. He wondered if the residents knew that Ha Yun was dead, and questioned his purpose in coming here, feeling that it was meaningless. He knew that Ha Yun could only move at night, and thought that if he met her family, he might somehow be able to help her. Just then, his phone rang. It was his mom calling. He answered, saying, "Hello, something came up, so I don't think I can make it today." His mom replied, upset. "You promised me. Are you just going to keep avoiding this? Ha Yun is always here, and death is coming later too." Choi sighed and said, "Fine, it's just that something urgent came up. I'll definitely come to you tomorrow." As he hung up, he looked up and saw a pole with a missing person flyer of Ha Yun. He muttered, "Sorry, Mom, I'll call you later," and walked toward the flyer, ripping it off while recalling the notebook's words that wandering spirits disappear in the morning, but ghosts and deletion-type houses show up during the day. He wondered why the residents didn't know that Ha Yun was dead and thought that if her body was found, she would be able to move freely. He reasoned that the best course of action was to meet Ha Yun and ask her directly, as finding her body would lead to the family being contacted. Sitting in his car, he glanced at the time, 2:58 p.m., and thought, it's already this late. It would have been nice if I'd found something by now. What if they get disappointed? He leaned back in frustration and ended up taking a nap in his car. It was already night when Ha Yun sat on the pillar of the highway, waiting for Choi. She watched the road, spotting a car that looked like his, and tried to wave him down, but the car passed by her. She smiled sadly to herself, thinking it was okay. "We promised to meet later, right? Not much time has passed yet. Let's not rush," she whispered, reassuring herself. As the night deepened, the rain began to pour, and she huddled on the side of the road, crying. Just then, Choi appeared, holding an umbrella, asking, "Are you okay?" She lifted her head, and he brushed his hair, saying, "Sorry, I'm a little late. Aren't I? I only meant to take a short nap, but I didn't hear my alarm." Ha Yun didn't respond, but the notification appeared, saying, "The midnight date is about to begin." She stood up, put her head on his chest, and said, "I thought you weren't coming." Choi smiled and apologized. "I'm sorry. Next time, I'll come earlier." They both got into the car, and as Ha Yun looked out the window, Choi asked, "Why are you sitting like that?" She replied, "I'm so embarrassed. I want to crawl into a hole." He then told her, I went to your house earlier today. Ha-yun turned to him, eyes wide with excitement, asking, Really? How was it? Is my family doing well? Did you talk about me to them? Choi hesitated before saying, I heard they moved a year ago. Someone else is living in the house now. Her expression fell, and she quietly said, Is that so? Sorry for making you go there for nothing. Choi suggested, Should we go to a convenience store nearby and talk? When she didn't respond, he continued, We could try contacting your parents directly. If that doesn't work, we could report it to the police. We should at least try everything we can, right? Don't worry, I'll help you. Ha-yun hesitated before saying, I appreciate it. But can I ask you just one thing? Why are you helping me so much? I have nothing to give you in return. You could have just ignored me, right? Choi smiled to himself, thinking he should just delete the game, but he couldn't bring himself to say that. He said aloud, Well? His gaze shifted to his phone, his eyes widening as a notification appeared, saying, Sudden caution. Choose before the timer runs. The 10-second timer runs out. Option A, because you are my type. Option B, because I am feeling bad for you. Ha-yun asked. Well? Choi tried to make sense of the choice before the timer ran out. He finally said, Because you are my type, and selected option A. Ha-yun smiled and teasingly replied, I mean, what do you mean by type? Do you have a ghost fetish or something? Choi hesitated, quickly denying it. No. It's just because a beautiful person was crying. I wanted to help. It's nothing special. You just look sad. She smiled and said, Then you didn't come here on purpose, right? As they continued driving, the GPS spoke. We will arrive at our destination shortly. Ahead of them was a building with motels and hotels. They pulled up to the motel, and both got out of the car. Choi held an umbrella and pointed to a nearby convenience store, saying, Look, a convenience store. You just picked the nearest one and ended up here. Ha-yun started walking with him, laughing as she said, Sorry, but I just had to make sure you knew. I mean, you suddenly brought me to this place. Some people help others just to demand money from their family, or they might ask for something shady, right? If it weren't for you, I'd still be wandering the streets alone, probably right back out there again. Choi snapped, embarrassed. No, I've never even thought about doing something shady with you. She laughed and said, Just kidding. Your reaction was funny, so I kept teasing you. He smiled, saying, Could you stop teasing me? She laughed again, replying, Sorry, but I feel a little more at ease now. You don't seem like that kind of person. Never mind, just talking to myself. Anyway, what should we do? Looks like the convenience store is closed. Choi took out his phone, saying, Yeah, I didn't think about that. Should we move somewhere else for now? Ha-yun thought for a moment, then said, Instead of going back, should we just go ahead? We can take shelter from the rain and have a chat, right? She gestured toward the King Motel as she spoke. Choi Do-hyun hesitated for a moment before deciding they would head to the motel. When they arrived in the room, Ha-yun eagerly jumped onto the bed, her voice full of excitement. Wow, a bed! It's so soft! She laid down, stretching out and sighing in contentment. Do you? She asked, her voice muffled as she relaxed on the bed. Do-hyun raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement in his tone. You came here just for the bed? She laughed, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Try living alone on a split every day. You have no idea how much I've missed this bed. She curled up on the soft sheets. All I could see was an endless highway and the loud cries of a deer. And yet the thing I missed the most was this bed. Ha-yun, you should lie down too, she added, her voice soft. Do-hyun hesitated for a moment, his cheeks flushing slightly. Can you not say things that could be misunderstood? Ha-yun tilted her head, her lips curling into a playful smile. Why? It's really soft. Do-hyun took off his jacket and sat in the chair nearby. I happened to learn something, he said, his tone more serious now. Ghosts with bodies left behind tend to linger where they died, and then they disappear when the sun rises. He walked over to the bed, sitting down beside her. He pulled out the missing persons flyer he had found earlier and handed it to her. I found this when I visited your home. The resident said you went missing 2 years ago. Even when I called the missing persons center, they said you're still considered missing. Can you tell me what happened? Ha-yun took the flyer in her hand, her eyes falling on the image of herself. She paused for a moment, her fingers tracing the edges of the paper. Honestly, I don't really know either, she admitted softly. I was heading home after finishing my part-time job, like usual. Then, something happened. A car hit me. When I barely regained consciousness, the accident had already happened. A man stumbled out of the car, looking drunk. He was making a phone call to someone. She swallowed, her eyes distant as the memories resurfaced. When he saw I was still alive, he slowly approached me and strangled me until I passed out. Now that I think about it, he put me in his car and drove somewhere. He had a rose tattoo on the back of his hand. I remember seeing an abandoned warehouse, and some containers outside from the car. But after that, I can't remember what happened. She looked up at him, her voice almost apologetic. Sorry, I don't remember much either. Choi Do-hyun reassured Ha-yun. Oh, it's okay. It must have been a very urgent situation. He paused before asking. You didn't know that person, right? Ha-yun nodded, her voice soft as she replied. No, it was someone I had never seen before. Do-hyun's thoughts raced as he considered the possibility of drunk driving causing the accident, with the driver disposing of the body in fear of punishment. Clenching his fist in anger, he stood up. First, we should check satellite maps for abandoned warehouses. If we can pinpoint the location, we might be able to find your body. Let's catch the crime together. The murderers should pay for their crime. He then asked, Don't you think things will go much more smoothly if your family helps? Do you remember their contact information? He pulled out his phone, ready to take down any details she could provide, but Ha-yun's voice trembled as she spoke. A lot of time has passed. What if my family has stopped looking for me? What if I only make them suffer more? He sat back down beside her, his tone gentle but firm. That will not happen. Your family went through so much trying to find you. They even moved because staying there reminded them of you, and they couldn't bear it. The neighbors all said your family was really close. Just from hearing that, I can tell they miss you. You're not the only one who wants to see your family again. Ha-yun wiped away a tear, her emotions rising, and gave him a small, grateful smile. Wait, did you ask all these questions on purpose? She said, her voice a mix of surprise and gratitude. This is kind of touching. I'm sorry and thank you. Choi Do-hyun looked at the time and said, It's late. Should we just text message your family first? As he typed on his phone, a notification popped up, telling him that his actions had increased Ha-yun's affection level. He glanced at her with a smile, but she was more focused on the screen. Is your father's name Ha Byamti? He asked, noticing the name appear on KakaoTalk. Ha-yun, sitting on the bed, got excited, her voice full of joy. Really? I want to see it too. She quickly jumped toward him, landing on top of him, causing both of them to lock eyes. Do-hyun blushed, flustered, as she teased him. What's with the expression? He awkwardly looked away, pushing her off him. You're heavy. Can you get down? She laughed, her smirk playful. What? Your ears are turning red, did you know that? Do-hyun stood up, still blushing, and said, Do you know your eyes change only when you're teasing me? Ha-yun apologized, still giggling, and he went towards the cabinet, grabbing a towel. I'll go wash up first, he said. I've been out in the rain and haven't showered for 2 days. I feel gross. As he left for the shower, Ha-yun crawled to the bed and laid down, sighing in comfort. This is nice, she murmured. It's been so long since I felt this comfortable. She smiled softly. I keep teasing him without realizing it. Being together like this is really fun. I wish morning would never come. Just as Do-hyun started his shower, his phone rang. Ha-yun walked over to check, and saw it was a call from Sok-ji-hyung. In a panic, Sok-ji sat on a construction site, dialing Choi Do-hyun's number repeatedly but getting no answer. Please pick up, Do-hyun, he shouted. Behind him, a ghost crawled ominously toward him, her body twisted unnaturally as spiders scuttled over her skin. Appa, why are you running away? The ghost hissed. She crawled closer, her voice sweet yet menacing. You said I was pretty? We were supposed to go on a date. Why are you running away? After finishing his shower, Choi Do-hyun sat on the chair and tried calling Sok-ji-hyung back, but the call didn't go through. He tried again and again, but there was no answer. Ha-yun watched him and said, It must have been an important call. Should I have told you earlier? Do-hyun gave her a small smile and replied, It's okay. If nothing's wrong, he'll call back eventually. Night had fallen, and the only light in the room came from the TV screen, flickering softly as Ha-yeon turned off the light. She was curled up on the bed and looked down at him lying on the floor, asking, Are you really okay even if you lie there? Do-hyun, scrolling through his phone, answered casually, Yeah, it's fine. I sit a lot, so when my back hurts, I sleep on the floor sometimes. She leaned toward the edge of the bed and asked, If it's okay, can I ask something about you? What kind of work do you do? When did you start seeing ghosts? You said you were on your way to your family. Are they shamans? He chuckled and shook his head, saying, Not really. It's a game. I'm a game streamer. I grew up with no connection to that world. Actually, you're the first dead person I've ever seen. She blinked, surprised, and said, So you just suddenly started seeing them, then I'm your first? A soft smile formed on her lips. I want to visit your apartment. I'm curious how you do your broadcasts. Do-hyun laughed, a little embarrassed. It's small and messy, so it's kind of embarrassing. She teased. Now I want to go even more. He looked over and said, Well, once your business is settled, should I invite you over then? Her eyes sparkled as she replied, Really? This will be my first time visiting a guy's place. The sky outside gradually turned lighter, the first rays of sunlight creeping in. Ha-yeon's body began to shimmer again. She looked at him with a soft smile and asked, Can I ask one more thing? He nodded. Yeah, what is it? But she didn't answer. He sat up, searching for her, but there was no one in sight. She had vanished with the dawn. A notification popped up on his phone. The midnight date has ended. Your romance score is being calculated. Your romance rank is A-. You have gained 60 LP. Clenching his fist with determination, Do-hyun scrolled through his phone, his thoughts lingering on the fading warmth she left behind. Later that day, Choi Do-hyun stood silently in front of his parents' apartment door, thinking to himself, I said I'd come, so I did. But the bitter echo of his father's voice from the past rang in his mind, I must be pathetic for expecting anything from a guy like you. With a quiet sigh, he opened the gate and stepped into the familiar corridor, his thoughts heavy. I acted all confident in front of Ha-yeon, yet look at me now. Let's just eat quickly and go back. Inside, his father stood by the entrance. Do-hyun offered a small smile and said, Have you been doing well? But his father turned away without answering. From the kitchen, his mother turned with a gentle voice. You're here. Your brother will be here soon, so wait a little. Do-hyun simply responded, Yup. Soon, the dining table was filled with dishes, and all four sat together. His father asked his younger son, How's life as a resident? I've gotten quite used to it. He replied, and the father nodded. Don't let your guard down and keep working hard. Becoming a doctor isn't easy. Meanwhile, Do-hyun quietly chewed his food without saying much. His mother placed another dish on the table and said, Why are you putting pressure on someone who's already doing well? The father shot back. What did I do? She replied calmly. You keep pushing him even when he's doing fine. His younger brother said with a shrug. It's fine. Dad went through it too, so he's probably just saying it from experience. Opening a bottle, their mother smiled. Well, you know how he is. But at least having the eldest son here makes me feel a bit at ease. She turned to Do-hyun and asked, How are you these days? With his mouth full, Do-hyun thought, I knew this was coming, and said aloud, Me? I'm managing somehow. Deep inside, he was painfully aware, 3 years ago, I ran away from this house. I know I have no right to return. After dinner, he bent down to tie his shoelaces when his younger brother approached from behind and asked, Where are you going? Just to the convenience store. Do-hyun replied. His brother turned slightly and said, 3 years is long enough, don't you think? It's time you got yourself together. But Do-hyun stood up and replied firmly, This has nothing to do with you, Hyun. I'll handle it myself. With that, he opened the door and stepped out, the air outside feeling just as heavy as the silence he left behind. Choi Do-hyun pulled out his phone and looked at the message he had sent earlier to Ha-yeon's father, asking him to trust him just once and call back, saying that his daughter was waiting. But the reply he received was cold and final, saying they were tired of messages like this and to leave their family alone because they were doing just fine. Do-hyun stared at the screen for a moment, then broke into a run towards the convenience store where he bought a shovel, muttering to himself about gas, money, motel fees, and now even a shovel this month he might have to survive on nothing but cup noodles. Sitting in his car, he started driving while thinking about the mechanics of the game, where LP is given after a date ends based on relationship score, and how those points could be used in the shop. With 100 LP in hand, he decided to buy a magnifying glass, an item that could reveal one desired piece of information about the target being pursued. The GPS on his phone confirmed he had reached his destination, a worn-down warehouse area surrounded by overgrown trees and containers. He stepped out with the shovel, thinking there were 3 warehouses near where he met Ha-yeon that had containers, and even photos from 2 years ago showed this was the only area matching that description. The problem was how to find anything with only a single photo as a clue, an image showing a tree with a hole in it and some grass. But he encouraged himself, saying it was better than having nothing, and the mountain wasn't that big anyway. He began searching and digging through the area, his efforts continuing into sunset. Completely out of breath, he collapsed onto his knees, frustrated by the impossibility of finding a specific tree in a forest full of them. He wondered if maybe he should just convince Ha-yeon's family to help, and that if the bereaved family got involved, things might progress faster. But even as he told himself it was just his own theory and maybe not even his responsibility, he knew deep down he needed to see Ha-yeon once more. As he was leaving the area, his foot got caught in a root, and he fell hard onto the ground. Exhausted and trembling, he thought to himself that he really needed to start working out, because even a little movement left him drained. Then a memory hit him, Ha-yeon crying and asking why he wasn't saving her. That moment jolted something inside him, and as he stood up, there it was, the tree. He pulled out his phone to match the photo, and it was the same tree from the image. His mind screamed that he needed to focus on rent, on work, that he didn't have time for this, but his body didn't stop. He began digging, even as his thoughts reminded him that Ha-yeon was just someone he had met 2 days ago, and that there had to be other ways to delete the game. Yet he couldn't let this person remain forgotten. Under the night sky, with trembling hands and aching muscles, he finally felt something under the dirt bones. A skeleton. Do-hyun slumped down in the dirt, staring at the skull peeking through the soil, and thought that all he ever wanted was for this person not to be left crying in loneliness. From behind, Choi heard a familiar voice calling his name. He turned and saw Ha-yeon standing by the tree, no longer ghostly, no longer transparent. She looked like a living, breathing human. Still on the ground, he stared in disbelief and called out her name. She touched her face and arms, smiling gently and saying she had noticed it too. She woke up, and somehow, she was back to normal. Then her gaze dropped to his pants, stained and covered in dirt, and she commented that he looked more like the one something had happened to. Embarrassed, Choi jumped up and tried to block the view behind him, especially the shallow pit where her skeletal remains peeked through the soil. He told her quickly that it was nothing and that this place was dangerous, suggesting they move somewhere else to talk. But Ha-yeon had already seen it. Her smile faded into understanding as she whispered that he was the one who found her. She said it felt strange waking up here instead of the roadside forest where she usually reappeared, and now she knew why. Even so, she gave him a reassuring smile and told him it was okay, that she had always known she was dead. Seeing his tears, she gently wiped them away, telling him not to cry because it only hurt her more. She patted his head and tried to ease the pain he felt. Later, the area was cordoned off with caution tape. Police and forensic teams were all around, gathering evidence and inspecting the remains. Choi stood nearby, overwhelmed and tense. A man approached him, showed his badge, and introduced himself as Detective Ha-young-cheo from the Violent Crime Unit. He said he wanted to ask Choi a few questions. Choi nervously agreed. The detective said he had just come from the scene and found the situation hard to believe. He mentioned the report Choi gave, about how he supposedly passed by, saw strange signs, and decided to dig, yet, suspiciously, Choi had come with a shovel in the middle of the night. The detective questioned why someone would bring a shovel here unless they already knew what they'd find. He even suggested that it would be more believable if Choi had committed the crime and returned out of guilt to report it himself. Choi, shaking and stammering, tried to explain that he only felt bad for her, but the detective interrupted, asking how Choi knew the name Ha-yeon when the police hadn't identified the body yet. Panic rose in Choi's chest. He thought about telling the truth that she was a ghost, and had told him everything herself. But who would believe him? showing the game wouldn't help either. Meanwhile, Ha-yun stood next to him, unseen by everyone else, desperately defending him and telling the detective that Choi had done nothing wrong. But her voice went unheard. Choi clenched his fists and begged the detective, pleading with everything he had, saying that he was telling the truth. From behind, Ha-yun's father came running toward Choi, shouting his name. Ha-yun turned at the sound and became emotional seeing her dad after so long. Her father rushed over to Choi, holding up his phone, saying he was the one who contacted him earlier. Choi had indeed called him after finding Ha-yun's body, telling him, "I know it's hard to believe, but I found your daughter. Please, could you spare some time? Just once. Ha-yun wants to see her dad." Now, her father grabbed Choi by the collar, desperately asking, "My daughter! Where is my daughter?" Choi, nervous but steady, said, "She is right there." But just then, Detective Han Yongcheol stepped in with a polite smile and addressed Ha-yun's father, saying, "Hello, sir. I'm Detective Han Yongcheol from the Violent Crime Unit. I'm not sure who contacted you, but the identity of the victim hasn't been confirmed yet. I'm sorry, but unless you're directly related, access to the scene is restricted." Behind them, Ha-yun stood crying, reaching out and calling, "Here, Dad, I'm here. I walked alone for 2 years because I thought my family must be looking for me. Even though I'm dead, I couldn't rest. If even my dad can't see me now, what should I do? I don't want to be left alone again." Her cries grew louder and her emotion swelled. A message appeared on Choi's screen. Her lingering attachment grows stronger. Seeing her break down, Choi quickly reached out and grabbed her hand, helping her calm down. Then he turned to her father and said, "She is still here in this spot. You asked me earlier how I knew her name. When I was driving on the highway, a bloody, disheveled woman blocked my car. I was terrified. I've never seen anything like that before. I tried to run away instead of helping, but she cried and begged me, 'Please help me. Don't leave me alone.' Her name is Ha-yun. I came all the way here to help her. I don't know how to make you believe me, but it seems I can see dead people." The detective looked uncertain and said, "Mr. Choi, in this situation." But Ha-yun's father interrupted, his voice trembling. "Is my daughter really here?" Choi nodded and said, "Yes, she's right here." Her father lowered his head, overcome with emotion. He said quietly, "I'll be right back. I'm going to the car for a moment." He returned carrying an old, worn stuffed toy in his hands. "It's a doll my daughter really loved. Even after she grew up, she couldn't sleep without it. I've been carrying it ever since she disappeared, believing she would come back one day. I'm sorry, young man. If my daughter is truly here, could you ask her what this doll's name is?" But before Choi could ask, Ha-yun walked forward and gently grabbed the doll. As she held it, the toy floated into the air and began to glow. Everyone stared in stunned silence. Choi smiled faintly and said, "The doll's name is Manhwa." Ha-yun held it tightly in her arms, tears streaming down her face, as she whispered, "It's Manhwa.